Now, suffice to say, that comes on the heels of what's been going on at Target. Now, what I want to try to do through the show today is just simply give you maybe a little bit of hope, but also maybe give you some encouragement towards actually taking the next steps in entering into the conservative backlash against Target and other places, and try to do so from a Christian perspective. So here's why I believe that you Christians out there, you people of good conscience, and you conservatives should be joining in the boycotting of places like Target and even places like Disney. So now we're going to focus specifically on Target. So for those of you who are not aware, which you hopefully are at this point in time, a lot of people are up in arms, not only about Bud Light because of their teaming up with Dylan Mulvaney, but also because of what Target just recently did in two things specifically. One, and this is not new, which is a little bit strange because the Target's been doing this under the radar for a long time, but it just recently was revealed that they were selling packing bathing suits, which essentially is the way to take the twig and berries, tuck it way underneath you so that when you're wearing a female bathing suit, you're not poking out everywhere, which good luck with that one. It sounds incredibly uncomfortable. And by the way, we do not know the long-term results of actually doing that to a man. So definitely higher vocal range is probably one of them, among other things. Testicular cancer, perhaps. Needless to say, that's one of the big issues that recently went viral with Target. But beyond that, it was revealed that Target also was gearing up for Pride Month. They were teaming up with something called Pralin. I don't know what it is. Don't really care. I probably am pronouncing it wrong. You can tell me I am down in the comment section below. But again, let's use our time more wisely and actually talk about who this company is. And this is a company that puts satanic-themed LGBTQ awareness apparel out into the market. And so Target teamed up with this satanic company to put out Pride gear for this upcoming Pride Month. Now, what followed as a result of these things being revealed is Target actually responding to backlash and losing billions of dollars, just like Bud Light. Now, in an attempt to try to avoid the same kind of fiasco that Bud Light experienced, now Target is also trying to do what they can to run the marketing machine up and to try to avoid backlash from both sides of the aisle here. And so what I mean by that is that Target now has announced that because of death threats and because of threats to their employees, they're taking their Pride apparel, and instead of putting it at the front of the store, they're going to move it to the back of the store, especially in southern places where supposedly some of these death threats came through. Now, I know you don't have to take it from me personally because I don't have the goods to actually prove this, but I'm just going to also tell you that neither does Target, because I would love to see the police report. But here's what I'll tell you. From my pretty extensive experience with the LGBTQ community, one of the first things that they do is they accuse people of making death threats against them, and they do not ever produce the receipts of this because they know that what that will immediately do is try to paint some picture of villainy and try to easily cast people as the bad guys and the good guys, whether or not there was actually any death threats. So let me try to prove this at least from common sense perspective, since they can't prove that there are death threats and I can't prove that there are not. So let me just kind of give you the common sense argument here. And the common sense argument is simply this. If you're getting death threats because of Pride apparel and you think it's enough that you should do something about it, do you really just move the location of the apparel? Really? Like if you're gonna cave, then shouldn't you cave in a way that actually shows that you're actually concerned? Which shows me that what these people are doing are just simply trying to appease a group of people. Now, they're trying to appease both parties. Here's how they're doing it. They're appeasing the conservatives by saying, all right, we hear you. We're gonna give in a little bit. We're gonna move our Pride stuff away from the front of the store. You can still bring your kids into our store. They won't see the LGBTQ stuff unless you're specifically going to try to find the tuck, twig, and berries bathing suits. So don't worry about that anymore. Come get your stuff. Now, they're trying to appease the LGBTQ community in this way. They're simply trying to suggest that, we are being threatened, and these conservatives, they're after us too. We're on your side, and we have to look out for the health and the welfare of our employees. So we have to do this because conservatives are so disgustingly evil and bad. But we're on your side. Please don't hurt us. Because here's what they truly know at the end of the day. The people who will truly give death threats, the people who will truly burn and riot and loot are those in the LGBTQ community, not those in the Christian conservative movement over here on the right. So it doesn't matter what the DHS says or what the Biden administration says. This is the facts on the ground. The reality is that they're just simply trying to say, hey, we have to protect our employees, right? And they're LGBTQ affirming too. So they're in your camp. And so don't be mad at us by the fact that we're having to cave to conservatives. And ultimately, there's a couple of things at the end of the day that all of this tells us. One is that you have way more power than you thought. Way more power than you thought. It also shows us that when you actually use that power, you can use it for good. You can truly make a difference. And that is what power is for at the end of the day. Ultimately, the left and their concern over who has power and who has cultural dominance is we're going to prove them right if we don't actually use whatever power the majority has for something good. Right now, Bud Light is reeling from the fact that conservatives are boycotting their business. And Target is on the precipice of doing the same thing. And this is very, very important because for far too long, corporations have called the bluff of conservatives because they knew that the activated body of people were those in the minority in the LGBTQ community. You say to yourself, how in the world do we get to the place where a small minority of people have so much cultural power? Here's why. They actually used it, whereas conservatives were just like, whatever, you do you, and you stay over there, you do your thing. We're not going to try to tell you what to do. You don't tell us what to do. You can take our Bibles out of school, prayer out of schools, and all that stuff, and not teach religion in schools, even though it has incredible historical import for every single person, atheist and secular and Christian and religious and whatever. You can take that all out of schools and you can have your way, but just, let us do what we want to. Just let us be. Well, slowly but surely, hopefully, we now realize that that was a recipe for disaster, that ultimately those with cultural power and a radical agenda are interested in changing the world for the future. So 2 things to say about that. And the first thing is this, is that the LGBTQ community has been working in the shadows for over 10 years, working with things like the Human Rights Campaign, where they have taken millions of dollars to create something called the Corporate Equality Index. Now, this ESG type of index puts companies and ranks them based upon their LGBTQ friendliness. And of course, while conservatives have been falling asleep on the job and now worrying about the culture and basically abdicating the responsibility in the culture, the LGBTQ community has been taking advantage of that sleepiness, and they have been creating things like what I just mentioned, and they have been doing so in order to appeal to businesses in this way. Businesses know conservatives will buy their stuff. They don't have to worry about them. That's a segment of the community that they already have. But here's an activated group of activists in a minority community, and we can win their market share. And because these businesses aren't necessarily moral in nature, then they are willing to just sell out to whatever will provide for their bottom line. So this corporate equality index is just like, hey, you do what we want, and then we'll support your business. And then people from our community who are really activated will shop at your stores. And so Target obviously is on that corporate equality index, as you can see on the screen. Among other stores like Patagonia, and hopefully you've seen by now their LGBTQ Pride Month marketing, which is just ridiculous, advocating like summer camps for kids and all sorts of things. Nonetheless, the point is that the LGBTQ community knew long ago that their operation infiltrating major corporations was the way to truly impact the culture. Now, they've done the long walk through the institution, and the academy is almost totally eaten up by progressivism. Now, but they also know that the way to reach the common people is through corporations and through what people sell, especially if you captivate those things that people actually need, places like Target and places like Walmart. And so they have been actively working within these institutions, within these corporations, to make sure to implement their agenda. Now, you may say what you want to about their agenda, but suffice to say, Target has now gotten to the place where they are now selling bathing suits that could permanently damage the body parts of girls and boys in the pursuit of treating those girls and boys as though they were the opposite sex. But of course they are not. And more importantly, treating gender as though it were just a construct, as though the twig and berries between your legs was just a figment of your imagination, and the way that you feel is way more important than your actual biology. So needless to say, they have been working so hard at this that now they have gotten places like Target to buy into this insanely radical philosophy. And again, I'll just step back and just ask you the question, what would happen if Christians were as serious as the LGBTQ community about making a difference in the world? And here's the most important thing that I think I draw away from this Target backlash and from the importance of boycotts. Because you may ask yourself, if we boycott Target today, aren't we going to have to boycott Walmart tomorrow? And of course, right now on the screen, I'll show you. Here's what Walmart is selling online in their stores for Pride Month. You get clothes for children. You get clothes that essentially suggest that anybody that doesn't, go along with the LGBTQ agenda is nothing but a bigot, and you need to be re-educated, and all sorts of kind of crazy stuff. So the question is like, now we have to boycott Target, and now we have to boycott Walmart. And like, where am I going to get my groceries if we boycott every corporation that actually buys into this agenda? So listen, I hear what you're saying, and the reality is no, you can't boycott everything, but you can choose some examples that you want the world to see, and you want the world to see, so that you can display what a good person using their conscience with their pocketbook looks like, and it will truly make a difference. And here's why it must make a difference. Because we're going to pass down something to our children. Now, we don't live in the Bible times where back in Proverbs it talks about, a wise person leaves an inheritance to their children. We don't live in that society anymore. And in part, that's very bad because, for instance, when my father passed away, he left me nothing. And there's no inheritance for many people out there because we live in such a different world. But the good side of this is that in the world we live in today, especially in the American West, is that capitalism creates upward mobility in terms of your financial well-being, so that you are not wholly dependent upon future generations passing down wealth to you that's built up over time, so that you can actually make a difference in the world and not suffer, starve, and die. Back in Bible times, that was one of the very few ways that you could actually get ahead of the game, was pass down inherited wealth. Now, we're not doing that today in the present, but the one thing we are doing undeniably, and we have done in every generation since the beginning of time to the present, is that we are passing down a culture to our children. And so here's the real question for you Christian, for you conservative out there. What culture do you want to pass down to your kids? What culture do you want them to grow up in? Because that is your responsibility. You have a unique and important responsibility to make sure that what you pass down to your kids is the kind of culture that you want them to live in. So here's the question. Do you want them to truly inherit a culture that is morally bankrupt or has so many agendas being infused into everyday life, but not the agenda that you actually stand for, that there's no room for you to actually operate in that world? I'll just say this. If we truly live in the marketplace of ideas and we truly believe that the best idea should win, then shouldn't Christians have a voice in the marketplace? Shouldn't we be doing something to make a difference? And if it means that we have to boycott businesses and even put ourselves through a little bit of inconvenience, Christians should be the ones who are willing to do so.
So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.